Hey guys, this is the talented Mr. Taco from the Daily Sporting coming to you with another edition of This Week in Fantasy Basketball. And did you know that over the last 2 weeks, Jeff Green has been ranked as the 28th player in fantasy basketball? We'll discuss all that and more on This Week in Fantasy Basketball. All right, guys, like we were saying before, this is This Week in Fantasy Basketball, and I'm your host, the talented Mr. Taco. We were talking about Jeff Green this week, and one of the big reasons why we're talking about Jeff Green is that ever since the Nets made the deal for James Harden, they lost a lot of depth up front. And with that being said, it opened up an opportunity for Jeff Green to really come in and play significant minutes and fill a decent-sized role for that team. Now, if we look at his stats and his numbers over these last couple of games, these last 2 weeks, if we see ever since the 12th of January, he's been averaging at least 30 minutes a game, other than 2 games where he hit 26. But roughly, we're looking at about a 30-minute per game guy. Okay, now one of the things about Jeff Green that makes him so intriguing and that gives him so much value is that, one, he plays 3 positions: power forward, center, and small forward. And we know that in standard leagues where you start 2 centers, it becomes very difficult to find starting caliber centers on the waiver wire or even in your lineup. That, once the top guys are gone, it's very hard to find someone that doesn't hurt you somewhere. Now, the thing about Jeff Green, if we look at his stats in general for the season over these last 2 weeks, one of the big things that we notice about Jeff Green is that he doesn't put up the most volume. So he only has 38 rebounds, so that's not the most. He only has 16 assists, 9 steals, which is a decent number of steals, 3 blocks, 14 three-pointers is great, especially if you're playing him at center. But the main reason why Jeff Green is so high is because he's super efficient. He's shooting 52% from the field, 94% from the free throw, and he's only has 10 turnovers with his line. So that makes him a very nice player as a last guy on your roster. Balance everything out, make sure that you're optimal and performing as best you can. Now, obviously, in certain situations, you may be looking for rebounds or you may be looking for assists or something like that, and that's where I would say, he wouldn't fit in. If you were looking for maybe 3-pointers from a center, that's where you look at him as being great. If you're looking for a guy that can hit free throws from a center, it's another place he's great. He's good for your field goal, but he doesn't take enough attempts for him to really be super impactful, but it will have enough of an impact that you'll notice the difference of having Jeff Green on your team, maybe 1, 2, or 3 percentage points differences on your team overall. Now, I would say that with a guy like Jeff Green, we have to monitor what happens in the buyout market, because the rumors are that Andre Drummond could be bought out or traded by the Cavs by the deadline. And if that happens, there's a possibility that he could go over to the Nets. Now, that would change the way the situation looks and how the minutes get allocated. So I think that's something we definitely have to be mindful of. But at this moment in time, if we're going to roll, for a player that you can use, during the week or for 2 weeks, or while you have some guys that are injured and you're trying to get your team right, I think that you could do a lot worse than Jeff Green, especially considering how efficient he is. That adds to a lot of his value. Okay. Now, what I like to do in This Week in Basketball is I like to give you a quick breakdown of what's going on in the league in a macro sense, and then I like to touch in on a couple of the waiver wire or certain situations that we should be monitoring and looking at to see how they play out. Jokic has been holding steady as the number 1 player in fantasy basketball. Kawhi Leonard last week was too, but Vujovic has been dominant and really been pushing his way up the boards. So he's definitely someone that so far this season has been a great return on investment, because you're more than likely getting him around 25 to 30. So he's been great. Damian Lillard and Steph Curry are balling like they normally do. If we look at their numbers, they're very similar, very close. Dame is definitely more efficient when it comes to turnovers, but Curry's actually getting him in field goal, 3 points. It's only a 13 3-point separating the two of them. We're looking at way more assists for Lillard. So I definitely think that we can finally end the conversation of saying that Lillard is a level below Curry. I think that's complete false nonsense where, it's disrespecting the skills and the time and work that Lillard has put in, and the consistency he's done as being the number 1 guy without having, other guys like KD, Clay, Holiday and all the other guys there. I think definitely Lillard needs to be elevated in this conversation. Malcolm Brogdon is another player that needs to be elevated in the conversation. We all thought he was a really good player, but this season with everyone being out in Indiana, they lost Victor Oladipo via trade. TJ Warren has been out with a foot injury, and then now we have Caris LeVert staying out with colon, I believe it was cancer, or there was a growth on his colon that they had to handle. So he's been out indefinitely because of that. So Malcolm Brogdon is definitely someone that if you can get him now, I would definitely say so. A lot of his owners probably wouldn't be willing to budge with a player like this who's been super consistent and is putting up decent numbers. I'm going to hold steady on my Miles Turner stance, where if you can get a deal for him, get a deal for him, because if we look at his numbers as they continue to go, he's carried by these 70 blocks. I mean, he is a block dominator, though. Let's be real. He controls one category by himself. He has to be putting himself on a defensive player of the year path. But after these couple of big games, we're starting to see him come back down to earth. His blocks, I mean, how many games can he put up like 5 and 6 blocks? He's done that a few times, but I just can't see a guy averaging that high on blocks for the whole season. Eventually, that's going to come down a little bit, and his whole value is tied to blocks. So again, I'm going to stay on this. If you can sell high, sell high. In the Bucks, we're seeing big moves from Middleton and Holiday as they've maintained their efficiency and effectiveness going along with the Greek Freak, who we know isn't the best shooter. So putting these guys next to him really opens up the floor and gives him an opportunity to shine. I think it'll be really interesting to see how this team meshes in the playoffs when they're playing against some of these better teams or these top teams in clutch situations. I think that'll be a very interesting thing to watch. Zach LaVine has been balling out of his mind this year. When we look at his stats, yes, he is turning the ball over immensely, but field goal and free throw, he has really been efficient. He has 67 threes, 500 points, 101 rebounds, 97 assists, 25 steals. I mean, it's really his turnovers that are killing his value, because otherwise he'd be so much higher up this board if you look at the amount of pure stats that he's putting in the game for you. So I definitely think this is kind of a situation where his value may not be as low as they're predicting it. Like, I would rather have Zach LaVine than Miles Turner, even though Miles Turner dominates in that one category for you. Overall, I think Zach LaVine provides a lot more for your lineup and for your team. Jerian Grant, I think this is a player that I was mentioning before. He came to Detroit because they were giving an opportunity to shine, and he is shining. He is definitely coming through as a top, right now, 15 player. He is probably the absolute steal of the draft. And he's someone that I just don't see stopping. He's efficient, he's effective, and he has a focal point. So he's someone that we definitely can look forward to maintaining that position. As we round out the top 25, Rashawn Holmes has been playing great basketball with the Kings. If we look at his stats, he's put up a couple of these duds, but he's efficient, he's effective. He's kind of like a poor man's Miles Turner. The only difference between him and Miles Turner is that Miles Turner gets those threes because he has 27 threes versus Holmes with 1. And if we look at their efficiency and effectiveness, it's very similar. Holmes is shooting way, way, way higher, but he also gets so little shots that it's hard to really put him as one of the top guys. Like, he's ranked at top 24 or top 25, but realistically, he's not a top 25 player. It's just that he's so efficient that it does help you in these categories. But when you look at the long scheme of it, he only has 153 field goal attempts. So, I mean, he's only going to have so much impact on your field goal. He doesn't hit threes. So, I mean, overall, he's a great player to have. Definitely, like I said, a poor man's Miles Turner, because he definitely doesn't have those blocks. We're talking about probably half the blocks of Miles Turner, and he's missing the three-pointers. So it definitely bodes well for a Miles Turner. But again, like I said, he's a good player. We've seen him go through flashes where he kind of disappears. It will be interesting to see how they play it out with him in Indiana. But I'm definitely, not someone that believes that his numbers will relate to this level of production for the whole season, and that you may be able to get someone that can look at this and be like, oh wow, Miles Turner's number 6 player of the year, I'm willing to do a big trade for him. And that's one thing that I mentioned. So now the next thing that I'd like to get a quick talk on is the players that we had mentioned last week. So last week I had brought up 4 players. I had brought up Kendrick Nunn, Justin Holiday, Dort, and Emmanuel Quickley as waiver wire pickups that you could look at. Now, when we look at the guys and what they've done, okay, I'm going to bring it back here for you. We see that Emmanuel quickly over the last week since we made this announcement, he's been on fire. He's 42% from the field, 93% from the field. He's getting his threes. He's scoring points. He doesn't really turn the ball over too much, and he's getting you some assists. So all around, he's been playing top 100 ball. Okay, so Emmanuel quickly. I mean, as we get deeper in the season, we're seeing it's getting closer and closer to him taking over, and he's going to end up becoming the starter there. Now, the next thing that we're going to look at is a guy like Justin Holiday. Now, Justin Holiday, he's been putting up solid numbers, but as we see, that field goal percentage is starting to dip down. As we look at his last couple of games, his last 2 games have been rough. Now, to me, Justin Holiday is someone that I would watch. If he's on your waiver wire, I would leave him there for now. If he's on your team, if there's a hot pickup, I would probably look to make a move on this. But at the same point in time, it doesn't hurt you to hold him for another game or two, especially I'm going to be looking at the next 2 games really closely to see how well he plays and see what's going on for him, because it's a very good possibility he's going to bounce back. If you look at one thing about Justin Holiday, his minutes are there. So he's getting the minutes. This could be just a little bit of a shooting slump that's bringing him down. So I definitely think that that's someone that, even Yahoo saying he should be owned in more than 34% of leagues. He's a solid player. He's someone that I would watch right now. At this moment in time, I don't necessarily make the jump for him because there's a couple of hotter guys that I'm going to show you, but he's definitely someone good to watch. And if you need someone on your roster and on some of the other guys I mentioned aren't available, he's someone you could definitely take a look into and maybe take advantage of. Kendrick Nunn definitely took that dive that I had expected from him. If we look at his stats and numbers, he started to dip off. Like the game that I had brought him up and spoke about him, he shot 29% from the field. Then his next 2 games, he really didn't do that good. And then he returned to his bench role as everyone came back. So Kendrick Nunn definitely lost a lot of his volume. However, one thing that one thing that we can say here, and like they're noting here, he went back to coaches did not play, so he's just not even getting burned. It definitely has to be the coach just doesn't see him as being part of the rotation. But one thing that we can realize with Kendrick Nunn is that 2 things. One, Gordon Dragic just got hurt, so that's going to open up another path for him to get some minutes again, so he can have some relevancy once again and someone that you should be watching. But also, there's possibilities that he could be traded to a team like, let's just say, the Warriors or the Clippers. I'm sorry, it was the Clippers that they were mentioning as the main team that he could be traded to. If he goes to a team like the Clippers and they put him into the starting lineup, I think he could definitely provide a lot of value and be someone that's super solid and that we could take advantage of. So he's someone that I would leave and hold with, especially with the game coming up on the 3rd, and see how he plays before I make a move on him. If you didn't pick him up, don't pick him up yet. If you have him on your team and there's a hot guy, you could pick up the hot guy. But I would say for the most part, we just want to keep watching Kendrick Nunn and see what happens because it could be an opportunity for him to come back in and get the opportunity to shine. Because as we saw when he was getting his playing time, he was doing good things. And last year, as you remember, during his rookie year, he was really solid. So it's not like this kid can't play. It's just, rotational issues, players that they prefer and how they want to play. Miami is just not winning. So for them, it's hard to pinpoint what they're going to do with the rotation because one of the main things that they have pinpoint down is Kendrick Nunn not getting time. And Kendrick Nunn, while he was going off in all these games, really didn't contribute to winning because they weren't winning. So it will be interesting to see what Miami does going forward because Miami's not in the playoffs right now, and we know they're gonna make a push to the playoffs or they're gonna make a trade and get rid of some of these guys because there's no way Pat Riley, Jimmy Butler, and Spoelstra are allowing this ship to sink the way it is. So I expect some moves from the Heat. Last player that we covered last week that we're gonna go over real quick, Lewis Dort. I would say abort Dort. He is right now on a cold streak. He's against someone that, he plays tomorrow, so we'll see how everything goes for him. But he's taken a huge nosedive. And like they say here, 56.9% of his shot attempts come from behind the arc, which is good from the essence of the fact that he's going to get his 3-pointers. But when he's shooting this bad, he destroys your field goal. And that makes it hard to roster a player like this. So this is why he's someone that I don't know. I just can't personally trust. anymore. He's someone that's outside of the circle of trust. He's someone that I'm going to be more than likely dropping for a hot waiver wire pickup, and I'll watch him and see how things progress before I make my next move with Lewis Dort. Now, as we covered the players that I covered last week and the top players for this week, I'm just going to quickly run down the top 25 players for this week and next week, this week and 2 weeks ago. And then we'll also cover two players that I think would be interesting pickups for you guys. So, real quick, Jokic holding it down. Leonard, as we see here, Doncic in the last 2 weeks has been balling out of control. Kyrie Irving, he came back, and a lot of people were worried about him. I was super worried about him. I didn't think he'd be able to hold up and maintain his relevancy in fantasy basketball as being one of these top picks, equaling his, top 2 to 3 round selection. But I've been pleasantly surprised with how efficient he's been, which has helped him keep up his value, because you know that his assists and his rebounds are not going to necessarily always be there when you have guys like Kevin Durant and James Harden controlling the ball. But when you look at how efficiently he's scoring, 54% from the field, 90% from the free throw line, I think that gives him an opportunity to maintain his top status in categories-based leagues. In points-based leagues, it may be a little bit harder for him, but in categories-based leagues, he's definitely going to be top-notch still if he can maintain this level of efficiency. 54% from the field and 90% from the free throw from your point guard, that's almost unheard of numbers. I mean, although, as I say that, we're looking at Steph Curry, who's also putting up similar numbers to that. So, some of these top guys right now are really delivering. Chris Paul has been absolutely on fire over his last couple of games. And if we look at what he's done, 34, 29, 13, 32, 21, 11. Now, a lot of this has happened with Booker being out with an injury. Booker did come back last night, and we saw that Chris Paul kept it up. And it's a little bit of a tricky situation to think that if the beginning of Chris Paul's season, his stats were down because he was getting used to the new offense and the new players and everything like that, or if age had finally caught up to him and we're starting to see the decline in Chris Paul. This week definitely gave him a jolt to his rankings, and I would consider maybe trading for him now. Before, I was not into it at all. Someone had mentioned maybe trading Chris Paul to me, and I was like, I'm not really liking the way he's playing. His stats really aren't there. But with the way he's really played over these last 2 weeks, he's definitely someone that, if there's trade opportunities there, he's someone I would listen to now. But also, I want to see how he plays now that Booker's back, because that's going to be a big key to his value going forward. All right, now, if we're scrolling through here, we see Miles Turner, 16, Rudy Gobert, 15, Jarrett Allen. I think Jarrett Allen is someone that if you can make a trade for, I saw someone dropped him in one of my other leagues. If you could trade for Jarrett Allen, I would do that. Like I said before, Andre Drummond more than likely is going to be traded or cut come trade deadline. Cleveland is going to get rid of him, and they're going to open up the opportunity for Jarrett Allen to come in and become a much bigger player and part of this rotation. If we look at his last game, he had 35 minutes, 23 points, 18 rebounds, 5 blocks. He shoots good free throws. He shoots good field goal. He gets you blocks. I am telling you right now, in the 15% of leagues that he's not picked up, pick him up now. If you can trade for him, trade for him. He is that good. He's been solid the whole time that he was the Nets. I think it was I get it. You're getting James Harden. They're building an offensive juggernaut there. But man, this guy, Jarrett Allen, is someone to definitely watch going forward, because I think he can put himself on an all-star potential as soon as probably next season when you think about it. Okay. Daniel Theis is someone that we can look at since coming back from his injury and everything that's gone over there in Boston. He's a solid pickup right now. He's owning 56% of league, so he's a little bit higher than what we normally cover over here. But let's be real. Now that he's back, he's getting solid minutes, and I honestly have no problem at all making a move for Daniel Theis into my lineup off the waiver wire, depending on who I'm dropping. Now, just to run it down the quick week. This shows you how well Chris Paul is playing. Like I was mentioning, in the past week, he had 55% from the field, 95% from the free throw, 9 3-pointers made, 108 points, only 16 turnovers to 30 assists, 9 steals. The guy does it all other than the blocks. Super, super, super efficient scoring-wise right now. I'm all in on Chris Paul. Chris Paul had me worried, and now he's literally shown up and shown out. Because I mean, like he was getting a lot of lines, not like this though, because he wasn't getting the 15 assists, but it was more like this, like 46%, 13 points, 4 assists. That's not something you would trade for. But when you look at some of the other things that he's doing, he's putting himself back into that conversation of being one of the top fantasy point guards and someone that you want to have on your team. Someone like Lonzo Ball too. He's been on fire his last couple of games. He gets you the steals. He gets you the 3-pointers. And that's a big knock on Lonzo. Lonzo is not the best 3-point shooter, okay? But he's starting to develop that shot. Last year he started to show it. This year he shows it a little bit. He has flashes. Is he completely there? No. Is he a guy you can get frustrated with? Yes. But is he someone that I would be looking at to get on my team? If field goal percentage wasn't something that I'm worried about, then no, I would not worry about getting him on my team. He's someone that I'd like to have. Al Horford came back after about a week's long absence or more. He was actually out from the 13th to the 25th, so you're looking at 12 days, roughly 2 weeks, for a childbirth. And since he's come back, he's been playing better than he was when he started the season. I mean, the first game that he came back, the 27th, he absolutely balled out of control. He's been shooting the ball really inefficiently. And it's a little bit scary to me how Horford is playing. So, honestly, Horford is a guy that if you can trade him, I would trade him. He's not someone that I want to hold on to long term. I think there's a good possibility he could be traded to another team at some point during the season. And he's definitely someone that I want to exit on. Like, if I could sell a stock, I would sell all Horford stock as soon as possible. Okay, Anthony Edwards is really starting to step up as a rookie. And speaking of rookies, I think this is a perfect time to bring this up because it's something that we like to watch here. This is the rookie scoring, and I'm sorry for the graphic because the graphic was not mine. I believe that this is from MSG New York, but this just gives you a quick breakdown of the rookie scoring going into this year. Anthony Edwards is number 1 with 13.1 points in 25 minutes. We got LaMelo Ball at number 2 with 12.2 points in 25 minutes. We got James Wiseman at number 3 at 12.2 points in 21 minutes. Now, the thing about James Wiseman that I would like to mention is that James Wiseman recently is starting to see his playing time dwindle because the Warriors want to win, and right now he's not ready to win. He's not fully developed on the defensive end, and you need to play defense to win. So that's one thing to watch with Wiseman. So he's definitely someone that, I don't know, like if I have him, I'd maybe look to trade him before I cut him. But he's getting to the point where he might be cut bait. True talk. Last player is Emmanuel Quickley as a 4th highest scoring rookie at 11.6 points in 18.5 minutes. You guys know I've been all over Quickley. I think he's definitely going to blow up. And he's someone that definitely could be a starter by the end of the year. And as you guys know, Electric Dave is someone that we like to have, or someone that, is always on with us. He's a big member of TDS, co-owner, everything like that. We're going back and forth because he's a huge LaMelo Ball fan. He's getting the rookie cards, and I'm telling him, LaMelo Ball's good, but look at this boy Quickly, especially in New York. He definitely has the potential to be, big time. And with how efficient he is and with how he can score, I think that going forward, Quickly is someone that could hold a lot of weight in this league and could possibly win Rookie of the Year. Do I think he's going to be the favorite to win Rookie of the Year? No, because we see LaMelo. Like I said before, LaMelo is really starting to come into his own. His field goal percentage is kind of up and down, but overall, LaMelo is starting to come into his own. Right now, he is the favorite. But let's see what happens. Let's see how the playoffs shake out and everything like that. So I want to round it out with 2 players that you could pick up on your waiver wire that could be really impactful and helpful. And the reason why I'm only giving you guys 2 this week as opposed to giving you 4 last week is because we actually have a special segment that's going to be taking place this week where me and Ricky, who is a big part of our Instagram content, he posts a lot of parlay bets and players to pick up on Instagram. We're going to be covering our 2 top players that we like as pickups, one at 50% owned, one at 25% owned. That could really be useful to you guys. So I'm going to give you 2 quick guys to cover here, and we'll get it. And I'll only probably use one of them for that show tonight. So the first player is DeAnthony Melton, and let's be honest here. A lot of people probably don't even know the kid. I didn't really know him that much until I'm starting to look at it. He's owned in 27% of leagues. He gets 22 minutes per game on the season, 48% from the field goal, 50% from the free throw, 1.7 threes, 10.4 points, 3.1 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 1 point steals, one block, 1.3 turnovers averaged on the season. In his last 7 games, he shot 51% field goal. He hasn't shot any free throws, 4.5 3-pointers made, 18.5 points, 6 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, 1 turnover. The kid has been balling. The kid has been playing really good. And I'm like, my question here is with a guy like Melton, right? Does he have the opportunity to really stick? Now, when we look at this, I was looking at in particular something that came out of Memphis. It just came out as of yesterday. And they were talking about the situation with the Grizzlies. Now, one of the reasons why a lot of Grizzlies have been on the waiver wire, because I'm seeing like guys like Brandon Clark only owned in 75% of leagues, is that they did miss almost 2 weeks because of safety protocols. So that caused a lot of players to drop them, which has given way to you getting some nice sneaky deals with some of these guys like Clark. But this has also given Melton the opportunity to come back in and really start dominating. Now, in his last game, he scored a season-high 20 points on 4 of 7 threes. The dude has been a great player where even the Memphis Grizzlies beat writers are talking about, him being a do-it-all player that is garnering consideration for an 8-figure contract. So, the question's really going to come down to what happens with Grayson Allen, who seems to be a coach's favorite, and Desmond Bane, who's a better shooter. So the question going forward is, how does this play out once some of these guys return from the COVID list and from injuries? But for right now, he's definitely someone hot to pick up and play. He's someone to watch going forward. And, if these guys come in and they start taking his time, then, it definitely makes sense to move him. But if not, he could be someone that'll be super valuable for you going forward in the season. Just because when you look at this guy's stats here, because let me just see if I can pull it up for you. I don't know why that Yahoo's giving me an issue with pulling it up based on his last name. So, okay. So if we look at his average in the past 7 days, 4.5, 18.5. If we look at his last 14-week average, 8. I mean, it's the same average, obviously, because they haven't played enough games. With this, we're looking at a 2-game span. So in the last 2 games, he's at 9 threes, averaging almost 18 points. Doesn't really turn the ball over much. Gives you some of these ancillary stats like steals and blocks. Gets you some rebounds. So I mean, he's had a 25% jump in the last day. So he's definitely someone that I would keep an eye on, and I would look to add, at least for the short term, as we see what's going on, and until he cools off, because, like we see with some of these guys, they'll be hot for a little bit and then cool off, and then the question is, how long do you hold them, and when do you make the switch? Like the old song goes, got to know when to hold them and got to know when to fold them. So before we get into that, I'll get into, but we'll end it with my last player that I'll talk about, and that's Thaddeus Young. He's been owned in 44% of leagues. Okay, Young. One of the biggest reasons that Young is showing up on this list is because that Wendell Carter has and I'll pull it up here. Wendell Carter is going to miss at least 4 weeks with a severe quad contusion. Now, with him having that setup and that injury, as we look in the last 7 days, when Thaddeus Young has really got the opportunity to play more minutes, he's had 45% field goal, 67 free throw, 0.5 3-pointers made, 10.5 points, 9.5 rebounds, 9.5 assists. That's insane. He's almost averaging a triple-double. 1 steal, half a block, and 1 turnover per game. So, I mean, if you look at this guy, he's been putting up insane numbers. And as we look at his game logs here, versus the Knicks last night, he had 1 3-pointer, 13 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, 1 turnover. The game before that, 8 points, 11 rebounds, 11 assists, 1 steal, 1 turnover. The game before that, 16 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, and 2 turnovers. So he's been hot over these last 3 games. It'll be interesting to see how the coach uses him going forward. Is he going to continues to get this type of role, because if he does, he'll be very valuable for your teams. So I want to thank everyone for coming by, hanging with us, watching us break down This Week in Fantasy Basketball. If this video brought you any value, please subscribe to the channel. We appreciate everything that you guys have been doing, all the interactions and comments that we've had. Thank you guys very much for your time. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, and we'll see you again this week. I'm sorry that I got it out on Tuesday. Normally I like to shoot it out for early Monday mornings, and that's going to be the goal going forward. This week was a little messed up. I was feeling a little bit under the weather, and that's why we're getting this a little bit later than normal. But yeah, this is This Week in Fantasy Basketball. Stay tuned for our waiver wire pickup edition. That's going to also be coming live on Wednesday. And we have some other content coming up. So we'll make sure to keep you involved and informed for this fantasy basketball season.